Do you know what I want to talk about?
Nando's.
Chicken. No.
Okay, no, that's what I want to talk about.
Oh, is it?
Because I'm going there after the.
Oh, yeah. I'm starving. Don't talk about it.
Come with me.
No. Okay. No, I can't do that.
Okay.
Maybe I can. Anyway, right. So look, Nando's.
Yeah.
I would have thought isn't that a bit
It is a bit, yeah.
for you with the
Yeah, but
processed food?
80% and all that.
Yeah. Right. I don't want to talk about Nando's. I want to talk about criminality.
Okay.
And, well, okay, I don't know what this is called, right? So criminals,
Yeah.
right, are nasty buggers, right?
Yeah, generally.
Generally. And when you are a criminal, there is no shiny edge, right? There will be a facade, there will be a mask that you put on, so the people around you think, oh, he's a lovely bloke. He loves his mum.
Yeah.
Just like the fucking craze.
Yeah.
Right. So what I want to talk about is why are criminals painted, right, in two really stark lights? So one set of criminals, right, the craze, let's put them up,
Yep.
are all hailed as, oh, they were good boys, they looked after the area, they made sure there was no trouble in my area.
Yeah.
Apart from when Ronnie walked into the blind beggar and shot someone in the face.
Yeah, but he deserved it, didn't he?
Yeah, well, he was, I don't understand how some criminals are heightened in society to these deity levels, and some criminals, quite rightly, are the scum of the earth. And if you talk to anyone normal from the East End of London, they'll go, "Nah, they're not real criminals. They didn't look after their mum." Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do know what you're saying.
So what I don't get it, right? So I have a very tenuous link to the craze. Through their older brother and a little bit of that, but I'm never involved. I'm not part of that world. Dave Courtney and all that, rest his soul. I've met him a few times. I didn't like him very much, but that's neither here nor there.
Yep.
These people, Dave Courtney put himself in a position where he wanted to be a film star, was in some of the most horribly bad films ever. But still managed to keep some facade. There was talk of him being a grass the whole time as well. So he was a polar opposites kind of person. You either loved him or hated him.
Yep.
Right? So why is it that some criminals, say if you rob a bank,
Yep.
right, and then society will see that because you're not a lovable chappy,
Yep.
right? They'll see that you're awful, you're terrible, and then you're condemned for doing that.
Yep.
But then there's armed robbers on telly now who've come out, they've been in prison for years, they've come out, and they're now like pundits, they're like crime pundits.
Yeah.
What's the deal?
Well, I guess things like the craze are glamorised, aren't they, by media, telly, books, all that sort of stuff.
Spandau Ballet.
Yeah, and the same with mafia and stuff. It's very much. I think it's the glamour around their life, isn't it, that is deemed attractive by people.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was in my teens, I guess I bought every book you could find on the craze and the Richardsons and all that stuff, and that there is a kind of, I guess, naive desire to be one of them, isn't there?
Actually, for me, definitely not. Mostly because I've been there.
Yeah, but okay, so for the nerdy kid that I was then, and kind of still am, I guess, just that, being someone who's kind of people are scared of and that people look up to and people respect to some degree, and having money and women and cars and everything you could ever want, or you think everything you could ever want, is kind of something to strive for, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then Hollywood and Pinewood and all of the film thing makes it glamorous, doesn't it?
Let's look at Goodfellas, right? Henry Hill.
Yep.
Okay. Henry Hill was the guy in Goodfellas who was, the main protagonist. Ever since I was a kid, I always wanted to be a good fella or whatever it was, right? He, in real life, was a huge fuck up.
Yeah.
Couldn't keep his mouth shut, right? Couldn't flip in. He then, Scorsese's production company went to him and said, "We want to buy your story," because that's how they all speak, right? So then he's enamoured with himself and starts swanning it about and annoys the gangsters that already want him dead, but they don't manage to kill him either because he went into hiding afterwards and did all that. He went into the witness protection program but couldn't hack it. So he said, "You know what? If they kill me, they kill me," and went back to his old neighbourhood and, was still eating whatever Italians eat. Like meatballs and pasta and all this. Sorry to anyone who's Italian, that was a terrible thing to do. My point being, right, look at the reality of who these people are, right?
Yeah.
Ronnie and Reggie Kray, right? Reggie Kray married a girl who killed herself because she was so unhappy with her life because he was homosexual and didn't want to know about it and ended up beating her, right? Ronnie, of course, was actually, you know, he was gay overtly and was, you know, what would be called today schizophrenic or bipolar, right? But was quite happy with the whole thing. He was living in this dreamland where he was king of the castle. And for a while, he was.
Yeah.
People who don't have a conscience are perfectly okay with killing people to their own ends, destroying lives, putting people out on the street. But they both love their mum.
Yeah.
And that's the key, isn't it?
Yeah, and I wonder whether that's marketing,
What?
genius marketing from their perspective in the first place, or whether that is the media or whatever that glamorises it.
I think what the Krays did, and it was quite clever, was their area was policed by them.
Yeah.
And the police, they stuff. So they didn't, any tow rags, all of that. Local kids were looked after. The street urchins were put in to work, you know, as either runners or lookouts. And they did do some structural, you know, integrity for their area. But actually, you know, the war with the Richardsons, you know, that created a lot of death. That created a lot of violence. That created a lot of bad feeling. And they treated their own people really badly. You know, I mean, there's documentation of you know, Ronnie Kray, again, burning people with, like, what do you call them, pokers out of the fire because they didn't say what he wanted them to say. Yeah. You know, and treated his own people like that. But then, you know, a lot of these people took a lot of secrets, definitely to the Krays' graves, and obviously some of their own. When the Krays died, there's another guy, and I've forgotten his name, but he used to run East London, right? He's the one person that the Krays would go to ask for help and guidance, right? After the Krays died, he just said they were just a nightmare. Yeah. They got way too big, way too quickly, and believed their own praise, right? But then you spin that as two younger brothers, right? They're twins. They grow up together. They do everything together. They, you know, go into the army and they get shouted at by a sergeant. They bang him in the mouth, end up in Shepton Mallet. You know, and then Michael Boone and Spandau Ballet are in there. You know, they're talking to each other in Shepton Mallet prison, and it's all this and all that, right? Michael Elfwick, who was Boone.
He was Boone, yeah.
Right. So you've got this little dramatisation of these two kids who grew up wild. They were great boxers. Well, yeah, all right. They were all right. And then all of a sudden it springs to these two fully fledged, fully rounded, absolute psychotic nightmares who are running East London. What I don't get, though, is why, because they have this story and there's enough people, there's the sway of the people, right? So all of the people around them in the area were either absolutely terrified or a little bit enamoured, because every Christmas, for instance, they used to pass the money about. They used to give some of it back. Bumpy Johnson in New York, right? Or was it New York? Anyway, black gangster, ran Harlem, right? He, every Christmas, had this truck, and he would fill it with turkeys and food for Christmas and give it out for nothing. Give the kids $100 bills. Right, and what cost him a couple of grand then bought him his area.
Yeah, exactly.
Because if you're able to feed poverty, yeah, and look like Robin Hood, yeah, then you are able to provide for your people. But then also those people become loyal. Yeah, they will watch your corners. They will make sure that if anyone steps into your territory selling heroin where they shouldn't, they'll be told within minutes, and that makes sense. Yeah, Al Capone. Yeah. The only reason Al Capone, I think, got as big as he did is because they shut down alcohol. Prohibition brought more alcohol into America than there had ever been before. More establishments, all underground. Everyone was paid off. It was raining money for everyone. The cops, the gangsters, everyone. Right? And it was only the self-righteous and the pious who had managed to get into government thought it was a great idea to ban that. Become teetotal, live a God life. No, you're going to get more alcohol than you've ever seen. More death.
Thinking.
Yeah. Well, that's it. Inconsequential thinking. Oh, my God, that's a concept. So, inconsequential thinking, let's have a look at that. You have a concept you're convinced is absolutely right. Yeah. Right? But you're linear in your thinking. So you do not see a full 360 picture of this situation. So, prohibition. Everyone smashing up alcohol, pour it all down, take out all of the tax dollars and the legitimate income from the brewers and people that have made this, criminalise it, therefore breeding a black market.
Yeah, and therefore you lose any benefit you would have had previously.
Yeah. So Al Capone was well known to have many soup kitchens and places where he could feed the poor. Wherever you have poverty, criminality spreads, and it's not for the obvious reason, right? It's not because, poverty breeds better criminals. Sometimes when you're hungry, you will not have a conscience about how you get your food, right? What it does breed is places where you can buy people. When you can buy people in numbers for a small amount of money, you can run a criminal enterprise.
Yep.
I wonder whether people would be so enamoured with gangsters if they understood the reality of them. So the Cray twins were played, like I've said, 100 times by the Spandau Ballet people. Yeah. Martin and Gary Kemp, or whatever their name is. I
prefer the Tom Hardy version of the film. But
right.
Yeah.
Now, Tom Hardy's version of that film was amazing.
Yeah.
But it was utterly spurious. There was a lot of it was made up to do that, and they said that. But the reality was, he played both of them very, very well. And also, Tom Hardy's amazing. Watch Mobsters, or whatever it's called now, the new gangster thing is fucking awesome. Because it's real. Yeah. Tom Hardy's a total nutcase. But he's like, hello, that's fine. Can I look at your CCTV? No, you fucking can't. Are you sure? Cheeky chappy, but he's going to stand up and rip somebody's head off any minute now.
Yep.
Those people, there's an admiration for those people.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, we've all got a conscience to some degree or another. If you can bury that conscience, make it disappear, you have no limits. And being limitless means that you can get wherever you want to be, yeah, whenever you want to be, because nothing will stop you. Problem with that is that if you're not part of a criminal organisation that protects you, you're going to get nicked really quickly.
Yeah, so something will stop you. Yeah.
Or you're going to die really quickly. And the reality of gangsterism is, right? So let's look at Italian mafia, Omerta, this thing of ours. All of these made men suddenly realised that the top men were all in it for themselves, the businessmen. John Gotti wanted glamour and he wanted grits and he wanted power and thought he was Teflon. All of a sudden, then, Sammy the Bull Gravano hears what's been said about him by John Gotti on these tapes. Sammy the Bull does what he does. He stays alive by any means possible. He grasses on him because John Gotti was going to do exactly the same to him. Mm-hmm. So he got in there first. So John Gotti stays in prison, dies of cancer, whatever. Sammy the Bull Gravano now is this tiny little old man on YouTube who is selling his life for pennies, but probably making millions, telling gangster stories. Everything I hate about that life, right? I don't think you and I have, on air, have ever sat down and had a conversation about gangster stories from my life, right? I don't think we've ever done that. I think we've done it in private, a little bit, but the reason we don't do that is because it's fucking boring, right? Yeah, okay. I used to be a criminal. Congratulations. I used to make money. What have I got now? I don't have a pot to piss in now. And now I'm on some... I'm not going to cheapen our charity by saying I'm on some crusade to do good, but I'm not on a crusade. I just know the value of life and how solitude can mess up your entire world. So now I'm doing the right thing. But if I sat here and told you a lot of the things, a lot of it you go, yeah, right, bullshit. Well, you might not because you know me, but everyone out there in camera land would be like, yeah, Jim, of course you did. Right? Also, it was not glamorous. At no point was my life glamorous.
No, but that's what's that's the myth, isn't it?
It's about the shiny diamond part of it. And that shiny diamond is not part of every criminality. Right? Sorin, who we spoke to last time, right? He was a vicious criminal. Now, his decisions have made him into somebody intelligent, erudite. He's able to explain things in a way that you and I probably can understand, apart from there was that moment, which you can see on screen, when my brain just snapped because I didn't really understand what he was saying. He has moulded himself into the shiny example of what happens after criminality, when you make the decision not to do it.
Yeah. Because if I understood what he said correctly, he kind of got to the point at the age of 25, he's earning loads of money and got everything that everyone thinks at the age of 25 you want, and goes, well, this is it then.
Yeah, that's it.
And then realises that isn't really what life's all about. And at that point, I guess, I think he said he was earning 20 grand a week or 20 grand a month or whatever, earning decent money.
Yeah.
But kind of I took that story in a bit further, and I guess you're sitting there going, well, I'm either going to get shot or I've got to spend the rest of my life, looking over my shoulder in case someone's going to kill me. It's unlikely I'm going to live out the rest of my life,
Oh, you'll live out the rest of your life, but all 15 minutes of it.
Yeah.
What also, the other thing was he was looking around at people around him, and he was one of the youngest there.
Yeah.
And the rest of these people had settled for that. This is my bar.
Yeah.
And he's too intelligent for that.
And it shows that that isn't what life's all about, is it? It shows that although we're sort of conditioned to strive for money, and money means success, it proves that it isn't. We spoke, didn't we, on the show about people wanting to be influencers these days. Teenagers want to grow up to be that. I follow Jim Carrey on socials, and there's a thing that comes up on his feed quite a bit when he says, "I wish everybody could be rich and famous," to find out that isn't what life is all about. And he's obviously had his mental health struggles and stuff, and I guess it shows that all of that is a myth, and it's quite impressive that someone at the age of 25 goes, "Do you know what? It isn't what life's all about, is it?" It takes most of us to get to our middle age to go, yeah, maybe it isn't all about material things.
Yeah, but what was his solution? Solution was to kill himself.
Yeah.
Right?
Initially.
But by luck or by God, it didn't happen.
Yeah.
I stopped my addiction, and therefore most of my criminality. I was out of most of my crime by then, but I stopped my addiction because I was going to die. And then, luckily, that wasn't true. I still feel like I cheated people. I still feel like it was like, I cheated someone somehow on that, which is really bizarre. I just got lucky. But, when I found myself in a favourable position where I was very, very astutely aware that I did not want anyone I worked with, apart from 3 people that I did trust, right? Knowing full well they could stab me in the back, have me killed at any point. But nobody who worked for me knew who I was, apart from 3 people, right? That was my coup. I did not live in some smoky fucking working men's club and go, "Hey up, lad, let's have this, let's do that," right? That was not it. I lived a very, very normal existence. Yeah. But I did crave money, and I know exactly where that came from. I grew up in Somerset with a set of parents who did everything they could for us, but watching my father be ground down by the fact that he had no money.
Yeah.
My mother didn't understand that there was no money, right? And just thought that all of these, oh, well, we've got an account at House of Fraser. Have you really? Yeah. No, what that means is you've got credit, which fucks him even more. So, I didn't want that for me. Because of my schooling, because of the way I came, the reason that I went into the way I did was because it was easy. Yeah. And I saw criminals as pretty stupid, which they're not. Street level crime, right? Things that don't take a brain, smashing something, moving something, blah, blah. There's usually a very, very clever person who's behind them, who have seen the bigger picture. So look, you go over there, cause a distraction, be a dick, get arrested for, social crimes, right? And over here, I'm going to do what the real work is, setting the police up. Now, if you look at the reality of criminality, most criminals do not get away with it.
No.
Right? So there's 2 ways out. You're going to end up in a box, which you are anyway, but you're going to end up in a box pretty soon.
Earlier, yeah.
Or you're going to prison. Right? Prison is soulless, horrible place where you don't get to flourish. You might be able to be a bully who swaggers around like you own the wing. Oh, congratulations. I know some people like that who all they talk about is, well, when I was inside. And it's like, why don't you fucking go back? Because you've got nothing out here. And it's the reality of criminality is that, yeah, you can get really rich really quick if you're good at it. Or if you happen to have an in with an Albanian who's going to give you a lot of gear, right? And then give you enough rope to hang yourself and you manage not to. But then you are totally and utterly run by them. Yeah. So, all of the things, I think emotion as well. Nobody ever thinks about emotion, right? Criminality, crime, and all of that is very emotional, It's emotive. So somebody does a crime, yeah, you're interested. Yeah, you think, oh, God, they've done this, they've done that. Now, your emotional reaction is what comes first before anything else.
Yeah.
So if it's anything to do with children, you will be disgusted and angry if you're normal, right? Anything to do with the bank heist, you're thinking, oh, think of all that money. And you can't stop yourself. You go, oh, do you know what? He's got millions. No, he's not, right? Let me explain bank robbery and the reality of that. You steal something, you have to take it to an other who is a fence. That fence then will give you 40%, so 40p on the pound, if you're lucky. If you're at the top end of your game, you can have 60% on the pounds on each thing. But then, here comes the subjective part. What's it really worth? So if you've got paintings and all of that, they've all got provenance. So if you have to go to a direct fence, and he will rinse you for it, because he won't be able to sell that for 20 years. Yeah. But he'll be able to move it on. There's private collectors who buy stolen stuff, right? You go and you take it, and you've got cash. You put that in your pocket, but then you don't know whether the bills you've got are marked or not. So when you put cash into a safety deposit box, it's usually sequentially marked because you've got it from, you know, you've gone to a bank, they've done this, blah, blah, they've had a money delivery and that's sequential, then people can trace that. So you spend it, you're done. So you've even got to fence some of that cash. You buy rubies, diamonds, all of that, right? But, you know, there is a market worth. You buy that and the market in diamonds crashed the day before, you're going to get fuck all. So you are really up in the air, and also you are entirely dependent on that fence. Now, if he happens to be an informant for the old Bill, because he's had a pinch the week before, you're going down, whatever it is. You might get paid out, he'll overpay you. And for those 2 days straight, you're going to have the best life ever. Because you've got money in your pocket, you're breaking out, I'm going to disappear to Spain. You go to the airport, you get picked up at the airport because there's a warrant out for your arrest. You're done. All these criminal pundits on the History Channel, I cannot remember the guy's name, but he was basically, he was a smash and grab artist, and then but actually knows a lot about armed robbery. They've got XL Bill in there from CID, the Sweeney, all of that, talking about how they do a sting and what's going to happen. So what people think is, if they watch these programs, they can be educated into the way it works and they can see the inner workings of it. But what isn't happening is they're not showing you the stupidity of it all. Because if you take something from somebody else, especially from, say, safe deposit boxes, you don't know who you're messing with. There's only a few people in this country who are capable of doing these robberies, and the old Bill know all of them. And once you've done one of those robberies, and if they don't know about you, they will know about you pretty soon, because someone will talk. Now, the problem with criminality is it's never insular. It's never, you can't do anything just on your own. Because, all right, I could physically do a robbery on my own. Go and put a gun to somebody's head, give me your money, done, right? Whatever, cash, that's great. But how much cash, really, are you going to get in that fashion? You might
enough to make it worthwhile.
Yeah, let's say you get 10 grand. So you're going to go to prison for the rest of your life for armed robbery. Right, you're going to get 9 to 15 years for armed robbery. Right, because you've got a shooter. Even if you've got a banana in your pocket and you tell him it's a gun, yeah, it's still intent. So you've told them you've got a gun. A friend of mine, okay, yeah, no, actually, no, a friend of mine, he's changed now. He robbed a post office, right, with a brick. And it sounds ridiculous, but what he'd cut a section out of a brick, right, put it in his pocket like it was a gun, shoved it up against the counter. The woman fucking believed him, because you'd believe him if you met him. He then took, I think he got 4.5 grand, and this is 92, 93, in a post office. In the days before the post offices, they were all out in the sticks. There wasn't any security. He took 4.5 grand, and he was walking around like he was mustard. Right? 3 days later, he got nicked, and they banged him up. They banged him up with armed robbery, right, with a brick, right, and he got sentenced to 9. He did 4.5, right. For that split second, where he was out in the world telling everyone what he'd done in a boozer, right, he didn't realise that when he took his mask off right outside the shop, that's the only place there was a camera. Yeah. Right, so that's the reality of criminality. And usually, it's because it's for two reasons. One, you're desperate and you need money, right? You've got no choice. There's nothing left. You've got to rob somebody. You've got to do something. You've got to sell drugs. You've got to do all that. Or you want to be someone better or more interesting than you actually are. Mm-hmm. Now, would it not make sense if you were like that to actually find something legitimate to make you into a better human being?
Yeah, but that's deemed too difficult, isn't it?
I would never have gone into crime if I knew back then what I know now. But I've needed the last 50 years of my growth to understand what I need to be as a human being, to serve my soul. I'm never going to have any money. I know that. I couldn't really give a fuck. As long as, right, I know my wife wants a house. I want a house. We want things that we don't have and we can't afford. We are all clothed. We are all fed. We all have dreams and aspirations. And quite frankly, I'm making them happen, right? You know, that charity is my dream and my aspiration, and I'm doing it, and I'm living it every single day. That is so bloody fulfilling that all the criminality in the world. Somebody offered me, right, the other week, I think it was a joke. They offered me an opportunity to do two moves, right, to do with narcotics, and I would walk away with 50 grand. And I thought about it for about 12 seconds. And do you know what actually happened? Like, they asked me about it. And I don't know if he's serious or not, but it was serious enough for me to think about it. Right? The first thing I saw in my head was Samuel. Yep. The second thing I saw was Samuel and my wife together. And the third thing I saw was a headline that said, "Local charity owner disappoints the world by doing crime." Right? Yeah. Now, obviously, that's a little bit more far-reaching than the reality, because the local headline would be, "Local dickhead gets what he deserves." Right? But understanding the reality of that, 50 grand's a lot of money. Yeah. But it's not enough to ruin everything I'm working for. No. And I don't think there is enough. Because you're not going to get away with it. Because people don't.
No.
How many times have you heard of the criminal who died of old age, right? Freddie Foreman, that's his name. He's the number one gangster in East London. Or, you know, with the craze, all of that. Sorry, bouncing back to that, Freddie Foreman. He lived out his whole life. But he still went to prison for arguably something he didn't do, right? He was still involved in all that. When do you realise, when do you understand that criminality never pays? Nobody dies in their beds as a criminal. And very rarely. Nobody gets away unscathed. You spend 15 years in prison and then come out and you loop back around and do it all again. Where are you going to go?
Yeah, but I guess it's all they know, isn't it, at that point?
Yeah.
Is there a way out? I mean, I can't exactly speak from experience here, but
no,
but is it that easy to turn your back on it? Is there not a threat that if you, sorry mate, you're in now?
I had to buy my way out.
Yeah.
But I was lucky in the fact that I was the kind of, I wasn't the top of the, don't get me wrong, I am not the head of some global crime family, but I had my own thing going, and the only person I relied upon was me and one other. And the other two people who trusted, who knew who I was, right, were two people who didn't know all of it. So one knew half of it, the other knew half of it. So together they'd have to do it. But if one of them put it in, I wouldn't go down forever. And I'd consciously thought of that. But, you know, I got nicked a few times, but I was out before anyone knew it. I never got processed through the system, apart from I was on remand for something I didn't do, which is fucking hilarious. But the reason that they tried so hard with that remand is because they knew what I was doing. Because everyone knows what's going on. This country is so full of cameras and so full of watching. You know, we're so past 1984, George Orwell and all of that. We are so far past being watched and everywhere you go. It's unbelievable, and people don't even see it. Yeah. You know, every time you're talking on your mobile telephone, right? There is nothing to stop anyone picking up them and listening to it, because there are listening stations that are run by government agencies, and this is not your Tin Hat Brigade saying this is the truth of it.
My Tin Hat Brigade.
Yeah, this is not a conspiracy.
Hey Siri.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Did my phone
just...
No, it didn't. So the shining criminality is mostly about two things: aspiring to that level of power. And that level of high life. Yeah. I think secretly when we watch these gangster films, unless you are mentally unwell, you know that it's a story.
Yeah, but you do sort of, you do get taken along by the glamour of it, don't you?
You do, yeah. And also, I mean, Casino, right? In Casino, there is a scene where there's a geezer with his head in a vice until his eye pops out.
Yeah.
And everyone goes, oh, you know, it's gritty. That's how it is. No, it fucking isn't. You know, I mean, the realest thing about that is the fact that the money moves and the trouble came on top when everything went wrong. That's the reality of it. People go to Vegas and they go, oh, it's really seedy outside. It's like, it's a whole place manufactured by criminals to make more money. What did you expect it to be?
Yeah.
And it's just amazing the stupidity involved in that. Well, the Krays, you know, they love their mum, Violet. She was a wonderful woman. Actually, Violet was an absolute cow. But she defended her kids like her mother would coming out of the war. Yeah. Of course she did. Right? And why wouldn't she? And I respect her for doing it. Yeah, she had a deadbeat of a husband, yeah, who didn't offer anything. The older brother, I feel sorry for him. He was the older brother who was usurped totally by his younger twin brothers. He always all he wanted to do was drink and tell stories about the good old days. And then in the end, he got framed by serious crimes. They took him to a party, got some geezer to say about, oh, can you stick some cocaine together? And of course, what's he going to say? Yeah? He's going to say, cool, yeah, of course I can. I'm the Crazy brother, and I know what I mean, I can do all that. All he wanted to do was be the life and soul of the party. Misguided, yes. Foolish, yes. Criminal, no. That's why the brothers never trusted him with anything.
Right, okay.
You know, that's the problem. So even members of that criminality, that golden criminality, actually led to everyone's downfall. Because the Krays spent more time in prison than they did out of it. Yeah, Reggie only got left out because he had cancer, and they knew he was no threat whatsoever. So they let him out into a hospital bed to die of cancer. That was it. Right? Ronnie lived a fucking life of Riley in Broadmoor. He had all the rent boys he didn't have to pay to his life's content. He had his Dunhill cigarettes, his nice clothes, and people got to come and see him. And they got millions of pounds in film rights, book rights, deals where they put their names to stuff. And they spunked the lot. They had nothing left. Right, to the point where other benefactors paid for their funeral. Well, paid for Reggie's funeral, because he didn't have no money. That's the hilarious thing about it. Died poor. But the perceived reaction of that is not that. The perceived reaction of it is they were great men. They were big. And in their way, you know, in their world, maybe they were. But I don't see being in prison longer than you've been a lot longer than out is any kind of win for anybody, is it?
It's just, I guess it's just a bigger version of you and your, not you and your mate, but your mate's story of, for that, in his case, 2 or 3 days, he was top of the world.
Yeah.
They were top of the world for a bit longer.
Yeah.
But their crash was considerably bigger than his.
Yeah.
You know?
Still the same story though, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like...
Men get into crime. Men have one big win. Men go downhill.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about the Richardsons. I got threatened with the Richardsons once.
It's the same story though, isn't it, really? It's just South London.
Yeah.
Really?
But I don't know. Apart from they had a big scrapyard and all that, and they would, you know, and they ran a lot of money through that.
Yeah,
is that right? You've read the book though. Did they used to have a court? Is that true? I don't know, because that's enamouring.
My mum was from South London. She probably knew him.
Probably did. She's probably one of them, mate.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it was a long, long time ago that I read the books.
I wish that we could find a way to explain that fiction, even fact-based fiction, is fiction and isn't the shiny bauble that you think it is. So looking at the reality of kids going into crime these days, when you have an area filled with poverty, gangs know how to nurture where parents don't.
Yeah.
So, you know, you have a tower block in wherever, and there's no money, there's no jobs, there's no light at the end of the tunnel. You haven't got nice trainers like everyone else has at school, is the way you see it.
Yep.
Some geezer called Tony comes up to you wearing a nice pair of trainers, he's got a gold bracelet, he drives a nice car, and he starts paying you attention. Not in any kind of sordid way, but just he starts paying you attention because he's looking for youngsters. Yeah. This is reality. He then offers that youngster, you hungry, mate? Oh, yeah, I haven't eaten for a couple of days. All right, come on then, I'll come and buy some food. He doesn't give him money to buy food. he goes with him to buy food, because then he is then seen as the provider. Because it's very easy to give people cash. Cash goes. But that instigation of going somewhere, taking those kids, that kid, to a place to feed them, shows kindness.
Yeah, it's a kind of maternal. Look at him and he's a lovely bloke. I bet he loves his mum.
Yeah. I bet his mum's an absolute shitbag. Right. So what happens next? Then when they move into that area, there are two things that happens. If you're Eastern European, like so now, Albanian gangster, they have absolutely no rules. They will kill your kids, kill your wives, kill your mother, do whatever if you cross them. People know that. But they also pay their bills to their people. So yes, if you step out of line, you're done. But if you don't, you'll eat that week, where before you might not.
Yeah, but then you've got no way out, have you?
No. But they don't.
It's still that initial hook, or whatever you want to call it, that gets them involved is still based on this concept that money and things is what means success. And
yeah, but yes, but when you have nothing, I don't know if you've ever been, and this isn't any kind of competition. I have been where I haven't had any money, and I couldn't eat, and I couldn't buy anything because I had nothing. And that went on for a few days. And then I had to go to a friend of mine and say, I've got nothing. I need some food. I haven't eaten. And they looked at me like I was mental, because everyone thought that I was, all right. But I was homeless, didn't have anywhere to go. I did have money at the time, but there was something had gone wrong, or, I hadn't received money, or I'd run out, or I didn't have a bank card, or I'd lost it. And there were three. And you don't go for help. That's the thing. When you're a proud person, you don't go for help. But these kids, right? These kids see this guy in the nice car because their societal perception is nice car, money, stability. I can eat whenever I want. They're not even looking at this point for baubles and trinkets. They're looking for food, right? So why is it that society can allow a gangster in a car to buy someone a burger where the parents haven't got enough money to do it, right? So if you look at criminality and those problems in society, that's never going to go away, because no one's ever going to save the poor. No. They're never ever going to be able to provide enough to stop gangsters knowing how to play the game. Also, look at it this way, right? Why do I make people cups of coffee when they come to one of our groups at Coffee and Coping? I make the coffee or the tea. The reason that is because then that builds trust. Yeah, trust. Right? Now, I didn't learn that from nowhere. Right? I've never groomed any kids. I've never provided anything. I've done it charitably and gone, are you hungry? Here it is. Right? But that comes from just the fact that the way we're programmed is that if somebody gives you something, you start to trust them. And that's how it works. So I think my point is that while there is poverty in the world, there will always be people that can exploit every side of it, who don't have a conscience. And what they want is these kids to stand on corners and sell drugs for them, because these kids won't get prosecuted. They might, if they're caught with enough, right, then end up indebted totally to whoever owns that gear as well. So they'll go to prison. Right, if they're, or Borstal, or whatever they go to, when they come out, there's a huge debt hanging over their head. It doesn't just go away. They're not forgiven. So then, therefore, there's control. So for the rest of their lives, a couple of years of it, they will be beholden to these people. And I think what people miss when they're watching these films, and don't get me wrong, I love a gangster movie. I love it, but I know it for what it is. It's fiction, right? I love seeing Tom Hardy portray a gangster who is totally rational on the outside, masking to perfection, but on the inside is an absolute stone cold psychopath who can just deal with anything. Yeah,
but a lot of us want to be like that, don't we? A lot of us see that is. Wouldn't it be great just to not actually give a fuck about anything? Do whatever you want, whenever you want.
Yeah, but then. Yeah, it would be fantastic. But then look at it again on that in that Mobsters. Right, his wife's going to file for divorce, right? But how's that going to go? Because you can't divorce a fucking gangster without some kind of badness, going on. But there are consequences to everyone's actions. So he's a fixer, right? And a fixer is somebody that is usually number two in a family who can deal with anything. So the old man goes mad, he shoots somebody in his house, which is what happened in that script, right? Then they call him in, he fixes it all, makes it all go away. and then the police are all circumvented, right? That's great up to a point until someone offs the fixer, and then it all comes down like a house of cards. Because you can't just depend on one person. Mm-hmm. I think what I'm really wanting people to see is that gangsterism, it makes a great story, but in the reality of it, it's never a great thing.
Because it's a story.
Because it's a story. The reality is, yeah, you may live in a big house in Essex for a long time. Yeah, you might have 10, 15 years of it. But 10, 15 years out of an 80-year life, there's an awful lot of prison time, or your life might just end. Criminality is weird. It makes people think that there is an easy way to make money.
So, yeah. People think it's easy, don't they? Yeah.
And it's not.
Because life's so hard.
Yeah. And also, what people don't realise is that when you're living in the hardest of lives, that sets you up for the future. That makes you resilient to all things, but it also takes away all hope. And when there is no hope, you will do anything to feed yourself, clothe yourself, protect your family. And when that desperation is exploited, there then becomes no way out. And that's pretty horrendous. So, next time you watch a gangster film, have a question in your mind. Is this real? How does this end? Because if you look at, let's go back to Henry Hill, if you look at the end of Goodfellas, he's got helicopters chasing him. Yeah, his Jimmy, who is the guy who ran the Lufthansa robbery, is going around literally killing everyone who was involved in that because he's convinced someone's going to grass him up and he wants all the money for himself. So therefore, everyone who had a win with the Lufthansa robbery, which was the largest cash haul in an airport ever, they're all dead.
Yeah.
Jimmy dies of cancer in a prison cell. Nice. There's no winners in that. But it makes a nice story, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't turn to crime. It's not worth it. If you are poor and you are hungry, there are food banks. There are places you can go. And if you need help, I personally can issue food vouchers. So if you're on YouTube and you're watching this and you're hungry and desperate, reach out to charity. Do not reach out to criminality, because it does not